Welcome everyone. I am Mattia Mori, Software Product Manager at BS. And today, we are here to present BS's new digital solution, SmartConnection, the software for managing orders within your company. When we were conceiving SmartConnection, we wanted to take a closer look at all the requirements that the digital revolution is causing to arise within our businesses. We've actually got interconnected digital factories, where the data travels in real time. This entire revolution can be summed up with the term smart factory, which essentially makes all the digital technologies designed to deal with industrial workflows available to us. This guarantees efficiency and optimization of all the industrial processes, whilst also enabling control over these. In simple terms then, a smart factory is a company where we have connected machines and devices, connected by a network that is, which produce data which is then captured by the factory's IT systems. These must then process the data in order to obtain useful information for use by those in charge of improving all of the industrial processes of the company. One of the main components of the Industry 4.0 paradigm is the MES, the Manufacturing Execution System. The MES is essentially a factory information system that has the task of monitoring and managing all the production processes. Via the MES, we can continuously monitor the data that comes in from the factory and remedy any inefficiencies that we may encounter during these production workflows. In essence, through the processing of data, the MES enables us to make decisions based on the real, concrete data that comes directly from the factory, and we can therefore correct any inefficiencies. This is all based on this data, which is real data that we obtain directly by retrieving information from the machinery in the factory. Within the context of the excitement and buzz of the digital revolution, we set ourselves the goal of providing our customers with a solution that could respond to the requirements of the smart factory. For this reason, we have worked with retuners to develop the SmartConnection solution. SmartConnection, as we mentioned at the start, is a solution for managing company orders which brings all the benefits that are typical of an MES, but without the associated complications. With SmartConnection, either via PC, tablet or smartphone, companies can manage orders, from the creation and planning to the scheduling and implementation of production. Once production has begun, the machines send data to the office, where SmartConnection will analyze, monitor the progress of production, and thus enable us to take any corrective actions in order to improve the processes. But now we're going to take a detailed look at the functionalities of SmartConnection, allowing us to gain a better understanding of how the software works. The first phase relates to the creation of the orders. The orders are simply a collection of articles that contain the information relating to these. Or, in other words, the phases necessary for the production of the material, shape, or any other type of information that is used in production. Once the order has been generated, the next step is planning. For the planning, all we have to do is identify a start date for the order, indicate the duration, and, if necessary, enter the program or the information required for it to be made. Next, we can move on to the use of the calendar tool, which enables us in a very simple graphic manner, simply by selecting the lines that have been automatically created by the previous phase, to manage any errors that we have made in planning, manage the workloads of the machines, or change the planning steps that we have already carried out as we wish. The last phase is the one which allows us to launch the phases on the machines or the blind workstations. This is the prelude to the real activity of the factory. These activities are usually carried out directly on board the machine via the operator panel, through which we can access SmartConnection. Once the work phase on the machine has been completed, the work will be finalized, and we will obtain all the information that allows us to analyze the machine performance and the production workflow itself. Through SmartConnection, and in full compliance with the smart factory paradigm, it is possible to create reports that show the data relating to production, allowing decisions to be made that ensure improvements in the efficiency of the individual production processes. Now that you have seen the functions of SmartConnection, we can move on to the Tech Center, where we will see, through a small demonstration, how the software can be used during day-to-day activities. Okay, now here we are in our Tech Center to see how it is possible to create a cabinet using the SmartConnection system for the management of the order. As we have mentioned previously, the first thing that we must do in order to manage the entire production of the cabinet is to create the order. Within the order, we will add the order name, the name of our customer, and the articles that our customer has ordered. In this case, we will look at how to manually create an order. But it is also possible to enter an order and create it by importing it directly from an external system such as NRP. In the first phase, then, we will select all of the articles, such as a cabinet in this case, and we will add the quantity. We will see once we have entered the quantity that the BOM will appear, the list of elements that it is made up of. Each of the elements help us to understand what we actually have to produce, and clicking on one of these enables us to check which phases are necessary in order to produce our articles. In this case, the cabinet will undergo an initial sectioning phase, a second edge banding phase for each of the individual articles, and will then move on to the last phase on the machine, which is boring. After having completed all of this, it is possible to move on to the assembly of the cabinet and obviously to the creation of the finished product, because SmartConnection is also able to manage blind workstations. Once this is complete, we move on to the planning phase. Within the planning menu, we can see all the phases that belong to the order that we have just created. For example, by selecting the sizing or sectioning phase, we can set the start and finish date and time for this particular phase. In this case, we can simply add a hypothetical duration for this individual phase. And then we have to select the machine that we want to use to carry out this phase. In this case, we have selected the WN, which is the machine that we will use for the sectioning phase. Now we can continue carrying out the same procedures for each of the phases that make up our order. Once the planning of all the phases relating to our order is complete, we can go into the calendar. The calendar will enable us to gain an overview of all the phases that we have just planned, which can then either be lengthened or shortened, once again in line with the actual duration of the production phase on the machine or the activity of the blind workstation. Or they can be moved in terms of timings, either forwards or backwards, provided that the sequence that these phases must follow is respected. So, using the calendar in the office, we can make use of this overview, which enables us to plan in detail each of the individual activities. Once all the activities that must be carried out in the office are complete, so the creation of the order, the planning and the scheduling, we can go and see how it is possible to use the SmartConnection application software on board the machine. Let's start with the first phase, which is sectioning, to see how the application itself is used directly in production. Now we are in the production department to carry out the first phase in the creation of our cabinet. On the panel saw on board the machine, and therefore on SmartConnection, we have all the information that we need to make our cabinet: the start time, the end time, and the quantity that we need to cut. We click on the order in question, and then we activate the production phase on the panel saw. Once the first production process has been completed, along with that related to the sectioning, we can move on to the finalization phase on the SmartConnection control panel. When we click on the order and press the End button, we can see the pieces produced, so that in the office we have the right information with regard to what has taken place on the machine, including how much time it has taken and what products we have actually processed. Once the sectioning process is complete, we can move on to the second phase in the creation of our cabinet, which is the edge banding phase. In this case too, via the operator panel on board the machine, the SmartConnection application software allows us to activate and thus start the processing by clicking on the relevant phase. Directly from the SmartConnection application software, the machine will receive the information on how to edge band the panels, so that we can proceed directly to the actual production phase. Now we have also completed the second phase in the production of our cabinet, that of edge banding. We can move on to the finalization phase, like we did before. By clicking on End, we can move forwards with all various pieces that we have actually produced, so that the system in the office can track all this data, processing times, pieces produced, and all the other information on the use of the machine that will enable us to move on to the next phase, which is boring. Now we have arrived at the last operation on the machine for the creation of our cabinet. In this case, once again, on the PC on board the machine, on the operator panel on the machine, we have all the information we need for proceeding with this phase. Clicking on the phase itself enables us to activate it. But in this case, we will also go ahead and send the machine the itemized list of programs that must be carried out on board the machine. So simply by clicking on the Send Recipe button, we will be sent all the programs to be performed. Once the last program has been completed on the machine, we move on to the next finalization phase. When we click on the phase and press End, as before, we move on to the configuration of the pieces produced. In this case, we have produced one of each piece, so we will insert the quantity and complete the process. Now let's move on to the last phase, which is the assembly of our cabinet. In this case, we have a tablet where we can see the SmartConnection application software. As we have done in the previous phases, simply by clicking on the Activate button, we can monitor the entire assembly process of our cabinet. As we have mentioned previously, SmartConnection can also monitor blind workstations, which are an integral part of the entire production process. In this case, we are looking at an assembly phase, but we could also be dealing with a quality control, packaging, or shipping phase. And so here we see that the entire production process is being fully monitored, from the actual production of the parts, so using the machinery, but also all the subsequent parts which together complete this production process, which must be monitored in order to ensure that all the activities performed during the production are finalized correctly. Once the assembly is complete, simply by using the tablet, as in all other cases, we will use the End button to finalize the activities carried out during the assembly phase. As such, with SmartConnection, it is not only possible to interconnect the various machines in our production process, we can also obtain all the data we require in order to improve the processes themselves. Now, let's move on to look at one of our customers who has adopted a solution of this type in order to improve their business processes. I am Matteo Albertin, and I am the director of Planoplast SRI. Planoplast is part of the Adviplast group, and we work in Italy in the distribution of semi-finished plastic products. Over the years, we have equipped the company with a workshop so that we can provide a complete service to the customer. We started performing machining operations in around 2012. And after a few years of experience, we realized that the digitization of information within the production process was an absolutely essential step. What happened? We interconnected all the machines that we have in our workshop with our system's IRP. What happened following this is that with the data collected directly from production, we were able to create a database that enabled us to provide quotes in a totally different way to before, as well as to control the timings, above all with regard to the timescales we promise to our customers, which in a company dedicated to service is fundamental. Data sets and statistics allow us to provide quotes that are much more accurate. They enable us to control our costs and margins better. The ability to monitor the processes within the company also allows us to invest in the right areas, whether this is more in training than in equipment. The success of our project can certainly be traced back to our partnership with Retuner and BS, who were willing to work with us to analyze and explore the possibility of digitizing a system as complex as ours. I hope that this event has helped to provide an understanding of how the SmartConnection application software can transform a traditional company into a smart business, into a smart factory. Thanks for joining us. Remember that you can come and visit us at all of our tech centers to see our machines in action and to observe how these have been interconnected using the SmartConnection application software. Thanks.